I just missed what you said there at the end. Do you support the nominee Zohran Mamdani in his race for mayor now?
I have not endorsed the assemblyman. We spoke on Sunday. We had a mutually respectful conversation. We have profound differences of opinion. There was no discussion of an endorsement, but there was a discussion of a commitment to continuing the dialogue.
I mean, this half measure pussyfoot and shit, just whatever. He's the nominee, man.
We have to continue to elect more socialists, and we have to ensure that we are unapologetic about our socialism. There are also other issues that we firmly believe in, whether it's BDS, right, or whether it's the end goal of ceasing the means of production, where we do not have the same level of support.
I mean, obviously, when he was running, he obviously moderated. It was the YDSA Winter Conference. Is there a... Oh, wow. Saucy boy. You legend.
For a couple of years.
4 years ago. That is not a long time ago. You guys disagree that 4 years is not a long time ago? I mean, look, a lot can change in 4 years. Somebody's politics can shift in 4 years for sure. Toro is back with $2. He's a real socialist, but I'll take that over MAGA. I mean, listen, I am fully on board. I'm not f***ing around when I say I'm willing to form a coalition with almost anybody who is opposed to Trump. There are going to be exceptions to that. Like, I'm not going to be in a coalition with Nazis, for example. If Nazis decided that they wanted to team up with Democrats because they don't think Trump is tough enough on Israel, I'm not going to welcome them into the coalition. But if there's a socialist who wants to be in a coalition with me to block Republicans from winning, that's fine. I'm okay with that. And ultimately, the voters of New York decided that this was their guy. That's what they decided. So I backed the voters, and I would support him in the election. There's some policies that he's talked about that I like. I don't hate all of his policies. I don't love some of his policies, but I don't hate all of his policies. He talked about, for example, it was, you know, we talked about it a little bit when I was talking to Pisco, but there's a situation in New York with street vendors. So the way that they give out permits to street vendors in New York is fucking insane. The system itself is super backlogged. So if you apply for a permit, it's going to take you years to get a permit. But if you get that, when you finally get your appointment and you can get the permit, it costs like $400. But because the system is so backlogged and because so many people, it takes them years to get a permit from the city, they have to basically like buy that permit from somebody else and for like insane cost. So like the permit holder paid $400 for the permit, but then they turn around and they sell the use of that permit for like $25,000. That's crazy. So he wants to cut regulation and make the process of getting permits easier, which is, that to me seems like a fantastic policy, right? Like raising the minimum wage, I think he wants $30 an hour. I don't think I'm opposed to that in New York. What is the median hourly wage for, let's say, retail workers in New York? $17.26. The average is $22 per hour. 30 may be a bit high, maybe a bit too aspirational, but maybe not. I don't know. I would have to talk to, like, if you want to raise the minimum wage like a lot, that's fine, but you have to do it in a way that's not going to like shit up. That's why every state and city that raises their minimum wage to, for example, I think in California, it's $25 an hour for fast food workers. I think it's, what's the minimum wage in Los Angeles? Anytime they jack up the minimum wage, they do it over like 5 years. So, you know, you can cause things like too much inflation locally if you move too fast on these kinds of things, or if you go too big. So it's about finding a kind of sweet spot. Yeah, I'm not sure I would oppose that. I would have to like take a look into it a little bit more. I mean, what are some of the other policies that I was just looking into his policies the other day. Hold on. Cracking down on bad landlords. 1 in 10 renter households reported a lack of adequate heat last winter. 1 in 4 reported mice or rats in their homes. 500,000 live in poor quality housing. That's why Zohran will overhaul the mayor's office to protect tenants and coordinate code enforcement under one roof, making sure agencies work together to hold owners responsible for the conditions of their buildings. I don't hate that. He will create a new office of deed theft prevention to protect homeowners from scam artists. He'll fix the property tax system so the city's wealthiest neighborhoods pay their fair share. He'll help homeowners comply with local law 97. And he'll end the tax lien sale. I don't know what that last part means, but I mean I do. But what does that actually look like in practice? So the Department of Community Safety. So this guy was like definitely, like Mamdani was definitely fully defund the police pilled. He has one subsection of the safety section. All New Yorkers deserve to be safe, but the Adams administration has failed to deliver the sense of safety and security that everyone should feel walking down our streets, riding our subways, taking our buses. Zohran will create the Department of Community Safety to prevent violence before it happens by prioritizing solutions which have been consistently shown to improve safety. Police have a critical role to play, but right now we're relying on them to deal with the failures of our social safety net, which prevents them from doing their actual jobs. Through this new city agency of whole of government approach, community safety will be prioritized like never before in NYC. The department will invest in citywide mental health programs and crisis response. So, I mean, this just looks like the kind of reforms that people were talking about in 2020, where, I mean, I don't know if he's suggesting we divert funds away from NYPD and into this new Department of Community Safety. So it sounds like it, but that was sort of the core of the defund action. Like that's what the most people meant when they said that. I don't hate that. We've seen that those programs can work. City-owned grocery stores is a bit of a question mark for me. When I looked into it, the profit margins for grocery stores is like 1.5%. So these grocery stores, these like, they're not making a shitload of profits. But I had some people in my chat tell me that there are food deserts in New York City. And so, I mean, if that's the case, like what I was reading is that city-owned grocery stores can work in underserved communities. If you have a community where there's not a lot of options, this is typically, we're talking about rural cities in America when we're talking about this kind of policy at scale. But I guess the worry would be that if you have city-owned grocery stores, that it would put downward pressure on prices, which would reduce those already really low profit margins for grocery stores. And so there's some concerns there. Fast fare-free buses. This is another thing that I think it sounds good, but I've also read some critiques that this could, I mean, the reason why we have fares is to like maintain the infrastructure. Like the money that the city collects from bus fares and things like that, they actually go towards like upkeep for these systems. And so if we got fast fare-free buses, but it resulted in like dirtier buses, or if the buses weren't maintained as well, then I think that would be bad. So I have some questions there. Fighting corporate exploitation. New York's working class is getting nickel and dimed, blah, 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 blah. They'll fight misleading advertising and predatory contracts and ban all hidden fees. It will ban non-compete clauses, which suppress wages and allow employers to take advantage of their workers. He'll end secret corporate handouts. Their tax dollars are given away to companies in agreements protected by NDAs, and he'll fund challenges to utility companies so that Con Ed can't raise prices without a fight. I think that stuff sounds pretty good. No cost childcare. After rent, the biggest costs for New York working families is childcare, blah, blah, blah. Zohran will implement free childcare for every New Yorker aged 6 weeks to 5 years, ensuring high quality programming for all families. Kind of love that. If you can raise the funds for that, like if you can collect enough tax revenue from wealthy individuals from raising their rates and then pay for something like that, then that seems pretty great. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of stuff here that I like in theory. Zohran will make it faster, easier, and cheaper to start and run a business in New York City so that bodegas and corner stores can stay open and dollars slices come back. He will cut small business fines in half, speeding up permitting, making online applications easier, increase funding for one-to-one small business support by 500%. He'll appoint mom and pop czar to make sure that happens. I like that policy. There's, again, I mean, we just looked at his policy platform. I mean, the guy's on this video 4 years ago talking about seizing the means of production. Ritchie Torres just today, I think, said he's not going to endorse Mamdani. Not surprising.
He says it's not language he uses, but he did not specifically condemn it. What did you think of that answer?
He's talking about globalize the intifada.
I strongly disagree. No one's advocating for imprisonment. I mean, every elected official has an obligation to condemn hatred, whether it's anti-Semitism or Islamophobia. The second intifada refers to a wave of terror attacks, suicide bombings, and slashings and stabbings that left more than 1,000 Israelis and Jews dead. And so when one uses the word intifada, it causes profound pain and trauma to the Jewish community. It is deeply offensive. Every elected official, without exception, should condemn it.
In the primary, you were supportive of former Governor Andrew Cuomo. He is going to stay, he says for now, on the ballot in November. Do you still support his candidacy for mayor?
My endorsement of the governor only applies to the Democratic primary, which is over. So the voters of the Democratic primary have spoken, and so my focus is on governing.
I just missed what you said there at the end. Do you support the nominee Zohran Mamdani in his race for mayor now?
I have not endorsed the assemblyman. We spoke on Sunday. We had a mutually respectful conversation. We have profound differences of opinion. There was no discussion of an endorsement, but there was a discussion of a commitment to continuing the dialogue.
All right, it doesn't sound like he's closing the door on that.
You're not ruling it out?
I think we have profound differences of opinion.
Okay, never mind. My timing on the streams lately.
Again, if he becomes mayor, and he's likely to become mayor, the mayor needs the New York City congressional delegation. The New York City congressional delegation needs the mayor. And so it's in the interest of both sides to have a working relationship to figure out how.
I mean, this half measure pussyfoot and shit, just whatever. He's the nominee, man. I mean, it does complicate things slightly, ever so slightly, that Mamdani was a vocal member of the uncommitted movement. I have mixed feelings about that. I would still vote for him if I lived in New York. I think you guys should vote for him if you live in New York. But I understand the saltiness. Uncommitted, to be clear, they suggested that people not vote third party. They suggested that people use their vote to oppose Trump. They basically said that voting for Kamala is the right play, but without endorsing her. And so in terms of, I don't think that's great, but it's certainly not in the neighborhood of like the Abandon Harris group. They were flatly just like, do not vote for her. So I would put uncommitted in a different camp, which is, it's not great, but it's not the worst thing they could have done, I guess. Their strategy was to allow space for members of their movement to say that they weren't going to vote for Kamala because, a lot of people felt very strongly about it. And so, they took this position of like, we don't think you should vote third party and we think you should oppose Trump at the ballot box, but we're not going to tell you we think you should vote for Kamala. Like, that's not great, but it's not horrible, So, but it is a bit poetic that a lot of libs now are like, well, I'm just uncommitted on Mamdani, I wouldn't do that personally, but I understand the saltiness.
Well, let me ask you about what I was just discussing with Senator Chris Murphy. The fact that you have leaders Schumer, leaders Hakeem Jeffrey, who wrote very nice things about your victory, said you'd won a very strong campaign, have not endorsed you. Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez has endorsed you. Do you think the Democratic establishment is afraid of you?
I think that people are catching up to this election. This is an election that went against so much of the analysis that had been told about our party and where we needed to head to. And ultimately, what we're showing...
I'm getting a little protective right now. Our party?
...is that by putting working people...
When did this guy... Well, I mean, I guess he's in the party now, right?
...people first, by returning to the roots of the Democratic Party, we actually have a path out of this moment where we're facing authoritarianism in Washington, D.C.
Well, let's talk about your policy.
We'll see about that, buddy. We'll see if the goddamn communists take over the Democratic Party.
Policies, your vision for the...
It's our party now, comrade.
city. Here are some of the things you've proposed: free buses,
Did he endorse Kamala? He did not. Let's just be honest. That's pretty dumb. Hutch, you need to get over did you endorse Kamala complex. It's over now. Move on. I mean, I'm still pissed about it, but I have moved on. I have said on the stream, I would vote for him. I would vote for a socialist if he's the Democratic nominee. I'm not a socialist, but I would vote for a socialist over a Republican. Those are my politics. I don't know about your politics. Those are my politics. I will support the Democratic nominee, whomever they are, because we live in a time of not fucking around. It's just not the time. I just saw that news article yesterday on my feed about these Sudanese mothers that are watching their children starve to death. And you're asking me to just move on. It's like, every day I see the consequences of this election. And so most of the time I'm focused on the present, looking towards the future, but there's going to be times when I think back and I think, I mean, of course I'm going to be pissed about that.
How are you going to raise taxes if you can't get Democrats to support it?
So I think what we've shown over the last 8 months is our ability to take that which is considered a non-starter and make it seem inevitable. We've shown that with this campaign, and ultimately we're seeing that our vision to tax the top 1% of New Yorkers, these are New Yorkers who make $1 million a year or more, and our proposal is to just tax them by 2% additional, is something that has broad support and will continue to increase that support over the next few months and years.
So you think you're going to be able to twist Governor Hochul's arm and get her to support raising taxes? I mean, what about the fact that she says she's concerned New Yorkers might leave? They might go to Florida.
I think it's time for a leadership that doesn't twist arms, but rather builds partnership. And I'm looking forward to having that with the governor, because ultimately my policies, my vision, it's driven by an assessment of what's actually happening. The Fiscal Policy Institute found that the top 1% of New Yorkers leave at 1/4 the rate of other income groups. And when they do leave, it's actually to other states considered high tax, New Jersey, California. So it's not fiscal policy, it's quality of life. And ultimately, the reason I want to increase these taxes on the top 1%, the most profitable corporations, is to increase quality of life for everyone, including those who are going to be taxed.
Here's how the Washington Post editorial board wrote about your proposals. They say a massive minimum wage would depress low-skilled employment. His rent freeze would reduce the housing supply and decrease its quality. Cutting bus fares would leave a transit funding hole that, unless somehow filled, would erode service. Meanwhile, the grocery business operates on thin margins, and his plan for city-run stores would probably lead to fewer options, poor service, and shortages. Mr. Mamdani, are your proposals going to hurt the very people you're trying to help?
Not at all. There have been many in editorial board who have had concerns, and what we've shown is that more than 400,000 New Yorkers are excited about this vision. And the reason they're excited about it is one that is in line with the scale of the crisis in this city. I mean, we are talking about our tax base growing smaller and smaller each day, with New Yorkers leaving to New Jersey, to Pennsylvania, to Connecticut. If we do not meet this moment, we will lose this city. And our proposals are ones that are thought out. They are ones that are also clearly going to be funded by these revenue streams. I'll give you an example. When we talk about grocery stores, I've put forward a proposal for a pilot of one grocery store in each borough. These are 5 grocery stores that would cost $60 million in a city budget of more than $113 billion. And ultimately, the reason that we are so excited by them is we've seen that they've worked in Kansas. We've seen that when a feasibility study was done in Chicago, it was shown to be something that was not only feasible, but pressing and urgent in an urban setting. And finally, it costs less than half of what the city's already set to spend on subsidizing corporate supermarkets without any guarantee of cheaper prices, any guarantee of collective bargaining agreements, or that they accept SNAP or WIC.
Well, you take me to my next question about grocery stores. Some executives, including one of the top grocery stores owners, billionaires, threatening to shut down his supermarket in the
Government-owned stores have been tried in various places, including Kansas City. For example, the town of Little River, Kansas, has a city-owned grocery store, although the store itself is privately owned and operated. These government-run stores are seen as a way to provide groceries to food deserts, communities that have been abandoned by for-profit stores. However, the success of such stores varies, and some have faced challenges. I just don't understand the point of committing to a government-run health grocery store in every borough. Is every borough underserved?
City. John Catsimatidis, who runs Gristedes grocery chain, you're probably very familiar with him. He said this on Election Day, quote, "If the city of New York is going socialist, I will definitely close or sell or move or franchise the Gristedes locations." In order to run New York City successfully as mayor, do you not need the support of a billionaire businessman like John Catsimatidis?
I don't know if I need his support specifically, but I want to make clear that my vision for this city is a vision for every single New Yorker, including business leaders across the city. And the reason I say that is that my proposals, even the ones to increase the top corporate tax rate of New York to match that of New Jersey, are ones that would also benefit those business leaders. Because when I have conversations with them, what I also hear is the just how expensive this city is preventing them from attracting and retaining the talent they need to grow their business. And
I think people are right to point out that there is a massive double standard. So like when a Democrat runs on some progressive policy, they're hounded by every interviewer about, you know, how are you going to pay for it? So it's become this meme. Every time they show up and they're interviewed by someone, how are you going to pay for it? How are you going to pay for it? How are you going to pay for it? And the reason why this is frustrating is because they never ask Republicans, for example, how are you going to pay for your bill adds over $2 trillion to our deficit over the next 10 years. How are you going to pay that? Are you not going to pay for that? So like there is a crazy double standard there, but that doesn't mean that the question itself is bad. Is it 4 trillion? That doesn't mean that the question itself is bad. That is an important question that you need to ask. Like, okay, are we going to take a loss on this program, or what are the goals with it, right?
And ultimately, I'm looking forward to having those meetings, having those sit downs to make clear why this vision would benefit all.
We went on.
My understanding is that all of Biden's policies were paid for.
Do you think that billionaires have a right to exist?
I don't think that we should have billionaires because, frankly, it is so much money in a moment of such inequality. And ultimately, what we need more of is equality across our city and across our state and across our country. And I look forward to work with everyone, including billionaires, to make a city that is fairer.
I mean,
for all of them.
Well, let me ask you about what Donald Trump, the president of the United States, has.
I think most people just want things to be affordable and want to feel like they have freedom to pursue creative endeavors, take vacations, have a few luxury goods, you know, have a roof over their head. I think people care about that more than they care about, you know, getting rid of billionaires.
He's had a lot to say about your campaign. He called you a communist. Because he's the president, I want to give you a chance to respond directly to him. How do you respond? Are you a communist?
No, I am not. And I have already had to start to get used to the fact that the president will talk about how I look, how I sound, where I'm from, who I am, ultimately because he wants to distract from what I'm fighting for. And I'm fighting for the very working people that he ran a campaign to empower that he has since then betrayed. And when we talk about my politics, you know, I call myself a democratic socialist.
Getting pretty tired of billionaires wielding so much political power. Now that is a legitimate grievance. That is a failure. I mean, it's a court failure, really, after Citizens United. But it's a failure of it's ultimately a policy failure. I agree that if you have a situation like Elon Musk, who can single-handedly spend $270 million to help elect Republicans, that system is fucking completely broken. And it cuts against the very kind of faux populism that Trump was trying to serve to voters. I mean, it's just such a betrayal of that. You can't run on populism and then have like someone like Elon Musk spending $250 billion or $250 million. There are problems with billionaires. I agree, but I'm just saying. I don't think most people, I think they care about affordable housing and being able to support their family and being able to live without the toxic stress of poverty. And you can do that without like getting rid of billionaires, right? Like,
in many ways inspired by the words of Dr. King from decades ago, who said, talk about how I look, how I sound, where I'm from, who I am, ultimately because he wants to distract from what I'm fighting for. And I'm fighting for the very working people that he ran a campaign to empower that he has since then betrayed. And when we talk about my politics, you know, I call myself a democratic socialist in many ways inspired by the words of Dr. King from decades ago, who said, call it democracy or call it democratic socialism, there has to be a better distribution of wealth for all of God's children in this country. And as income inequality has declined nationwide, it has increased in New York City. And ultimately, what we need is a city where every single person can thrive.
All right. Stay right there. We are going to take a quick break. More of
It's a good line with the MLK.
our exclusive conversation with Zohran Mamdani.
When I think about, so like when I looked into like, was MLK Jr. a full-fledged socialist? And it's a bit nuanced. Like, he was definitely not a Marxist. Was he like an FDR Democrat, or was he like an actual socialist? He expressed an openness to a variety of socialist policies, but I don't think it's accurate to necessarily call him a socialist or even a democratic socialist.
Policy that had previously been.
Yeah, he was definitely very critical of capitalism and was very openly advocating for wealth redistribution, not just for black people, although he did advocate for reparations, but he wanted to do like a holistic approach to addressing poverty, just generally.
Been defended by Democrats and Republicans alike until the fear-mongering of this current mayor. And it's a policy that we've seen ensures that New Yorkers can get out of the shadows and into the full life of the city that they belong to. And it's one that I will be proud to stand up for.
Well, the border czar, Tom Homan, has said that he is planning to deploy ICE agents to New York, worksite enforcement to essentially increase and enhance the number of ICE agents here. If that happens on your watch, how do you plan to handle it?
We have to.
I mean, socialism is such a broad term. I only recently discovered that socialism actually predates Marxism, but socialism took on a new meaning after Marx. Socialism in its earliest forms was just about striving towards a more egalitarian system of like wealth redistribution. But then it took on a sort of specific kind of form after Marx came around and dropped his critiques and predictions. It was a concept that was very utopian and vague before Marx came around.
To stand up and fight back, and we haven't seen that from our current mayor, who has instead been working with the Trump administration to assist in their goal of building the single largest deportation force in American history. I mean, we saw ICE agents arrest a migrant at Federal Plaza, and then we saw NYPD officers arresting a pastor who was peacefully observing that arrest. Those days are going to come to an end when I'm the mayor. The NYPD's job is to create public safety in the city, not to assist ICE agents in their mission to attack the very fabric of this city.
I want to talk about the historic nature of your candidacy. If you were to win, you would become the first Muslim mayor of New York City. Along the way, throughout the course of this primary campaign, you have received death threats. You've received all sorts of attacks online. Congressman Andy Ogles called for you to be deported, for example, because you were born in Uganda. He also issued an Islamophobic epithet, which I am not going to repeat here. But what type of toll has this taken on you personally and on your family?
It's been difficult. It's been difficult to have to deal with the regular and repeated smears and slander upon my name and on the very basis of my faith. And I think what's so sad is that this is but a glimpse into what life is like for many Muslim New Yorkers and many New Yorkers of different faiths who are constantly being told that they don't belong in the city.
You muted it earlier, but Caroline said the Trump administration is willing to investigate Zohran to denaturalize and deport him. Jesus. No, I think we did hear that part. Very fashy. They're being very open about their fashy tendency these days.
City and in this country that they love. And ultimately what continues to give me hope is that these moments are but small examples, something that goes against what so many New Yorkers actually feel. Because what we know is that this is a city for all of us. And what Tuesday night showed is that what New Yorkers want more than anything is a vision that binds us all together.
I want to ask you about an issue that has divided some New Yorkers in recent weeks. You were recently asked about the term globalize the intifada, if it makes you uncomfortable. In that moment, you did not condemn the phrase. Now, just so folks understand, it's a phrase that many people hear as a call to violence against Jews. There's been a lot of attention on this issue. So I want to give you an opportunity to respond here and now. Do you condemn?
The problem with the phrase, like from the river to the sea, is that some people, when they say globalize the intifada, they mean basically just a resistance against imperialism. And for other people, when they say globalize the intifada, they're talking about a violent resistance movement or a violent sort of revolution. And For that reason alone, you probably should not use that kind of language, especially in a city like New York City, right?
Condemn that phrase, globalize the intifada.
That's not language that I use. The language that I use and the language that I will continue to use to lead this city is that which speaks clearly to my intent, which is an intent grounded in a belief in universal human rights. And ultimately, that's...
I mean, yeah, you're running for mayor in a city like New York City, has an enormous Jewish population. Probably a good idea just to say the phrase is bad, but...
What is the foundation of so much of my politics, the belief that freedom and justice and safety are things that to have meaning have to be applied to all people, and that includes Israelis and Palestinians alike.
But do you actually condemn it? I think that's the question and the outstanding issue that a number of people, both of the Jewish faith and beyond, have. Do you condemn that phase, globalize the intifada, which a lot of people hear as a call to violence against Jews?
I've heard from many Jewish New Yorkers who have shared their concerns with me, especially in light of the horrific attacks that we saw in Washington.
He's got to walk this like tightrope where he doesn't want to give up his democratic socialist sort of radical bona fides. And at the same time, you know, he's got to try to make inroads with certain demographics, not just with Jewish people specifically, but people that are broadly supporters of Israel or whatever.
Washington, D.C. and in Boulder, Colorado, about this moment.
It's a very politicky answer, you know,
of anti-Semitism in our country and in our city. And I've heard those fears and I've had them.
Yeah, radical bona fides. Like he has, I mean, I feel like he would sort of proudly call himself a radical, right? I'm not using it in a pejorative sense. I'm saying radical in a neutral way.
Those conversations, and ultimately they are part and parcel of why in my campaign I've put forward a commitment to increase funding for anti-hate crime programming by 800%. I don't believe that the role of the mayor is to police speech in the manner especially of that of Donald Trump, who has put one New Yorker in jail who's just returned to his family, Mahmoud Khalil, for that very supposed crime of speech. Ultimately, what I think I need to show is the ability to
I don't think he'd call himself openly a radical today because he's running for office, but
not only talk about something, but to tackle it and to make clear that there's no room for anti-Semitism in this city. We have to root out that bigotry, and ultimately we do that through the actions, and that is the mayor.
His position is radical to some, but quite normal for others.
Will be one that protects Jewish New Yorkers and lives up to that commitment through the work that I do.
But quickly, for the people who care about the language and
which position, right?
Who feel really concerned by that phrase, why not just condemn it?
My concern is to start to walk down the line of language and making clear what language I believe is permissible or impermissible takes me into a place similar to that of the president, who is looking to do those very kinds of things, putting people in jail for writing an op-ed, putting them in jail for protesting. Ultimately, it's not language that I use. It's language I understand there are concerns about. And what I will do is showcase my vision for the city through my words and my actions.
Let me ask you broadly, your surprise victory has some progressive Democrats saying, boy, you may have determined the model for the Democratic Party nationally in this moment. Do you think your campaign represents the playbook for how to win in the Trump era for Democrats?
I think it showcases a new approach to politics in our city, and it's for others to decide across our country. Ultimately, what we wanted to do from the very beginning of this race was change our political instinct from lecturing to listening. And after the presidential election, where we saw New York be the state in the nation with the largest swing towards Donald Trump, 11.5 points, and we saw that swing took place far from the caricatures of Trump voters, I went to those hearts of immigrant New York City that were the fulcrum of those swings, Hillside Avenue in Queens.
I think he was an unusually strong candidate in the sense that I think he is attractive and charismatic. He's a really good speaker. And so that, I think, is a more effective vehicle for like super progressive policies. I do think you're going to see a lot of candidates all over the country try to emulate his success. And it's just going to depend on a variety of factors whether or not they're going to be successful. But I would expect probably this is not going to be the last Democratic socialist-y type candidate that sees success in this country. I mean, there's also sort of a pendulum swing away from Trump in this moment that helps with this kind of thing. People are unsatisfied with the economy, so that's another kind of lane that you can attack it from and just speak to bread and butter issues. We'll see if it'll be like a model for national politics. I mean, I'm still right now skeptical that a candidate like him could achieve success in the presidential primary in 2028, but it's not off the table. It's definitely not off the table. It's possible.
Fordham Road in the Bronx, and I asked Democrats, who did you vote for and why? And I heard from them again and again, I voted for Donald Trump because I could afford things that are now out of my reach today. And ultimately, when I asked them what would it take to bring you back to the Democratic Party, they said a relentless focus on an economic agenda. And
that was the other thing too, is like he had a really savvy campaign that I think did a phenomenal job of like driving the news cycle. He was just, this is an attention economy, and he was so good at keeping the attention on him. And you can credit whoever his production team is. And I guarantee you, they're going to be able to charge a higher rate for their next campaign, because they just did such a really good job of having it feel like maintain a kind of grassroots feel, while at the same time being really well polished in as far as his production, the production went. It was just very, very well done.
That's the campaign that we built.
Do you think that your apparent victory is a...
Democrats and the American people elected a Muslim socialist from Africa in 2008, and his name was Barack Hussein Obama. True.
That there is an appetite for young progressives like a Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez to run for president in 2028.
It's an honor to be endorsed by Congresswoman Ocasio-Cortez and to have been represented by her for so many years, because she's showcased so much of what we're trying to do in this campaign. The ability to not only stand up.
Yeah, I agree. This is the Democratic Tea Party, but I don't think it can be successful if they run a scorched earth kind of campaign. I'm not opposed to having a Democratic Tea Party moment, but it needs to be one that is defined by coalition building. Like, if you go to war, if you make it an intra-party civil war, it's just going to blow up. The whole thing's going to fucking blow up. It has to be a movement that is driven by, like, aspiration, hope, goals, unity. It can't be one that's driven by, you know, these people inside of our tent, they're trying to you. It can't be that. That won't succeed, I don't think.
Up and fight, but also to win. And ultimately, what people want to.
And I think to Mamdani's credit, I think like he's kind of doing that. Like, he's not really going scorched earth. You know, like you can tell with his language. Like, he is obviously their messaging strategy, their campaign strategy right now is to build a coalition, and it's not really. He's not doing the scorched earth thing. So.
See is someone who doesn't just believe in something but can deliver on those things. And now, especially more than ever, we need to be a party that's not just against Donald Trump but also for something.
Oh, to be clear, I'm talking about intra-party swings. I'm not talking about, like, yeah, definitely go hard on Trump, like, especially when he's slipping in the polls, like, for sure go scorched earth on him.
And our campaign was for working people, for bringing dignity back into those lives, and that's what the Congresswoman has showed time and again.
I can't let you go without doing a little bit of local politics.
Please.
So Mayor Eric Adams already in the general election as an independent candidate. We're waiting to see if Andrew Cuomo officially throws...
It cuts, to be clear, it cuts both ways. So I don't want to see more moderate Democrats taking all these jabs at progressives either. Like, this isn't, the onus is not just on progressives to maintain the tent. Just to be clear.
Into the ring. Do you think you can win if the two of them are in the race? Can you beat both of them?
Absolutely. We can beat anyone that's in this race, because what we've shown is that this is a campaign that has the support of more than 400,000 New Yorkers. In the first round of Tuesday night, we got more votes than Eric Adams did by the last round of 2021. And ultimately,
Mr. Mandela, Adams won by 0.7%. People were talking about him running for president. Zohran won by 18%. I don't think he should be taking any notes from moderates. Well, whether or not he's taking notes from me specifically, he's doing the thing that I'm advocating for. So obviously his team agrees with me. Buddy.